We are on page 117. There is another basic realization. This is where we have to read. If everybody is ready with the text, we'll start.
Yes, we are ready.
Okay. So before we start, I'll read out the summary of the previous paragraph so that now it is the subject is we know what he is talking about. One second. Yeah. So what he's saying, as stated earlier in the last para, some persons experience the cosmos within themselves. Okay? You see the whole universe within yourself. But in some other cases, the cosmic divine can be experienced outside oneself in the physical world and also in other individuals. You see the divine in nature as well as in other individuals. Individuals can include also animals and other things. Okay? The divine presence can be felt or seen as indwelling in everything, but also as containing everything. Now that's almost contradictory at our normal level, but at that level it is possible. You see the divine in everybody, but you also see the divine containing everything. Okay, so this is what he is saying, containing everything. Yet it is not in any way bound to these external forms in the cosmos. Okay, if he is not bound, then it is transcendental. So this is what he is saying. It can be experienced in that way. In other words, it can be cosmic, and cosmic also in a double sense. It can be indwelling everything, but it can also be containing everything. And Sridhar uses two words. Okay, he uses the words apprehensive consciousness and comprehensive consciousness. Comprehensive consciousness, when your consciousness contains the whole universe within yourself. And apprehending consciousness, you see yourself in every person, every thing, even objects. You see your own, you see the presence. Indwelling all, but also containing all. And at the same time, the transcendental. So it can be cosmic and transcendental at the same time. Normally you have the experiences separately, but it's also possible to have them simultaneously. That is Srivna's experience. Again, the divine presence can be felt or seen as a pure solitary self. Okay? It's almost like a person and nothing else is there except him, which contains everything, and in this silent omnipresence, the human ego disappears. Okay? There is no more the human ego. You don't feel yourself limited to a body, you feel yourself to be everywhere. Later, the divine presence can be felt as entering and possessing the outer nature of body, life and mind. So first you see it outside yourself everywhere and your ego disappears. You feel yourself to be large and absolutely free. And then later on, if you are lucky, you will see this presence entering into your own being. That means the body, mind, life. But now something very strange happens. But now the thoughts, emotions and actions which you think were yours now are not produced in the old instrumentation of body, mind, life, but seem to emanate from this divine presence inside me. It's a divine presence which is creating my thoughts, creating my emotions and creating my actions. There is no more ego, and although I am conscious of myself as a body, mind, life, I am not the body, mind, life, and the divine presence has occupied my body and is producing all my thoughts. I am not responsible anymore for my thoughts and emotions and actions. This is what he is saying. But seem to emanate from this divine presence within me, which has invaded and occupied my being. So different experiences all Surendra has obviously had, and that's what he's saying, that all this is possible. It may not be possible for others because usually these experiences are exclusive. You have them only one by one. The Surendra is saying you can have them one by one, but you can also have all of them together also. Now, you see that everything is coming out of yourself, but it is not in an egoistic sense because ego has disappeared. It's a divine presence within you that is creating all your thoughts and emotions and actions. The ignorant, egoistic outer nature has been replaced by the divine presence. Obviously, it's a very high level of consciousness. Now, Devoid of wrong identification with outer nature and ego, man feels himself to be an individual form created and placed in the universe for the convenience of divine action in the physical world. You don't see yourself as a body, mind, life anymore, but you feel that the divine has created this individual form so that he can work through that individual form and do his work in the physical world. Your identification is completely gone. You have become a very, very beautiful and obedient servant of the divine. You become absolutely an instrument of the divine in the physical world. That's what you feel. This is what he's saying. Okay? So now we go to this. Is all the experiences are possible. So now we'll go to the next paragraph, which you said that we have read. So I'll read each sentence and see whether it is clear. Now, there is another basic realization, the most extreme of all, that yet comes sometimes as the first decisive opening or an early turn of the yoga. This is what happened to Swayambhu. He is going to talk about the silent mind and also the nirvanic experience where the physical world disappears. The physical world is non-existent for you. You see forms. It's not that you don't see forms, but they have absolutely no reality. And this reality also can be graded. Sometimes you see them as shadows, sometimes you see them as illusion, and sometimes you see them as a mirage. Okay? It is absolutely, there is nothing in it, no substance at all. So all these are possible. But it is the most extreme of all, that yet comes sometimes as the first decisive opening or an early turn of the yoga. That's what happened to Swayambhu. That's why he's saying that. It is the awakening to an ineffable high, transcendent, unknowable. Okay? Mind cannot know it. Above myself and above this world in which I seem to move. I am now moving in this vast ocean of unknowability, if you want, okay? Featurelessness. And it's a timeless and spaceless condition or entity which is at once in some way compelling and convincing to an essential consciousness in me. So you feel that this is absolutely the real thing. It is compelling and convincing that this is the real thing and the physical world is the unreal. Okay? An essential consciousness. Obviously, what he means is the essential consciousness is the soul consciousness. And the non-essential consciousness is your body, mind, life. Remember, there is a consciousness in the mind, it is mental consciousness. There is a vital consciousness, there is a body consciousness. So consciousness has adjusted itself to all these levels. It can be there in the soul, it can be there in the mind, it can even be there hiding in matter. Okay, so this is we have discussed many times even the body consciousness. No? The body consciousness is a very interesting one. It makes you do things automatically. It's the body that is reacting because it is conscious. You're coughing, you're sneezing, your eyes closing, okay, and taking rest, all these things, or the capacity of the body to heal itself. When a cut comes, it immediately starts coagulating the blood, okay, a scab forms, and it is healing itself. So this is the body consciousness. So, but now you feel that this essential consciousness in me, your soul, has gone there, and the world in which I am moving, the absolutely static, silent, featureless, infinite consciousness, and I am in it. Okay? But without the ego, without any limitation. I am everywhere. The one thing that is to it overwhelmingly real. Note the word overwhelming. Okay? It is so real that the physical world is unreal. This experience is usually accompanied by an equally compelling sense either of the dreamlike or shadowy illusoriness of all things here, or else of their temporary, derivative, and only half real character. So even the illusion can be seen in grades. So he is giving you all the grades. First grade is dreamlike. Okay? When you are experiencing the dream, it's absolutely true. So it is dreamlike or shadowy. It's like a shadow. And the shadow can disappear easily, and you don't think that the shadow is real. Exactly in the same way, the physical world appears to be a shadow. But he is also saying something else. He is saying it can also be a temporary, derivative and only half real character. Okay? It can be, oh, maybe there is some reality to it, but it's temporary. It will vanish. Okay? So, derivative, it is not the essential. It's only an outer form. It derives from the real, but is half real. And only half real character. This half real character, usually three examples are given. One is the blue sky. Okay? There is no blueness, but you see it as blue. Okay? And the rainbow. Okay? The rainbow also is not real. It's an illusion. The light comes into each drop of water in the clouds and it creates a rainbow. Okay? But there is no such thing. It's only an illusion of the senses. Or the best is the shadow. Okay? These are all half real. Why half real? Because they exist and you see it. It is real at the sense level, the sense consciousness level, but it is not true at the mental consciousness level or the spiritual consciousness level, it disappears. So, now he's saying, he's describing this nirvanic experience, the silent mind, the self, the Brahman, all these are equivalent words. The Atman or the Brahman consciousness is usually described as this, the self, Atman. That's why you use the word self in English. For a time at least, all around me may seem to be a moving of cinematographic shadow forms or surface figures, and my own action may appear as a fluid formulation of some source, ungrasped as yet, and perhaps unseeable above and outside me. Your own action seems to be coming from somewhere else. You are not deciding what action you are doing. The action is originating somewhere and you are doing it. Okay? It's like you see that I am not doing anything, but the action is taking place in my body, mind, life. This is one of the big realizations in yoga, when you realize that you are not the doer. It is universal nature which is the doer. It is motivating your body, motivating exactly in the same way your vital, as also manipulating your mind, putting thoughts into it. Okay? So this is a universal nature which is making you move like a puppet. And normally we don't realize because we are egoistic. We have said this many times, so we are just repeating. To remain in this consciousness, to carry out this initiation or follow out this first suggestion of the character of things, would be to proceed towards the goal of dissolution of self and world in the unknowable, moksha, nirvana. So if you get stuck at that level, you end up with the Buddhistic philosophy and you experience that and take it to the extreme limit. Yourself, your soul also goes back into where it came from. Just like the wave is born in the sea, but when it comes and to the shore, it breaks and the wave disappears. So you can also do that, and that would be the Buddhistic solution. Okay? It is valid. You can do that. But that's not the only issue, they're saying. There are other possibilities also. So your soul can realize from where it has come and goes back to where it came from. The infinite divine presence of consciousness or whatever you want. But that's not the only line of issue. But this is not the only line of issue. It is possible, on the contrary, for me to wait till the silence of this timeless, unfilled liberation. Unfilled because it is featureless, if you remember. It is infinite but featureless. It's empty. Okay? Unfilled liberation. I begin to enter into relations with that yet ungrasped source of myself and my actions. The ungrasped source of myself and my actions is the transcendent. Then the void begins to fill. Fill with what? Fill with knowledge, fill with love, fill with power. These are the three attributes of Satchidanandana: consciousness, knowledge, and ananda and power. All these things, they start filling. There emerges out of it, or there rushes into it, all the manifold truth of the divine, all the aspects and manifestations, and many levels of dynamic infinite. The infinite need not now necessarily be a static one. It can become a dynamic infinite. You see the physical world also with all the energy and all that, you see it as real. The forms are there, but behind the forms, there is a dynamic reality. So, look at the word dynamic. That which seemed to be static and silent, you enter into that, and then it fills with everything, and you see the physical world as not at all unreal. You go to another level of consciousness. This also is possible. Buddhistic solution is not the only solution. The ascetic solution of stopping all rebirth is not the only solution. You can continue to remain. No? So, in fact, that's what happens. Okay, Mother and Shremdu have left their body, but they have not disappeared. They could have if they wanted, but no, their ideal is something else. They want to help the world and take the world further. So, they remain in the subtle world, in the individual form, but without the ego. The individual form without the ego, you feel yourself to be vast. You feel yourself to be a person. But this person is not limited, it is unlimited. So, what happened to Sri Aurobindo? Vivekananda came to him. Okay? Even Ramakrishna came to him and told him something. He told him, Mandir Godo. Okay? Build a temple. And Sri Aurobindo says that this was his message. But at that time he thought, when the experience came to him, he thought that Ramakrishna is telling him to build a physical temple somewhere. Later on he understood that no, he meant build a temple within yourself, in your heart. Let your heart become a temple. He says that, I think in the evening talks, I think he says that. So Srindra is saying there are so many possibilities. So either the soul can disappear into where it came from, or it can remain permanently in the subtle spiritual planes of consciousness and help, or it can even come down and take birth again in the physical world. That is the third possibility. First possibility, disappear into the infinite. Second possibility, don't disappear but remain in the subtle world. Okay? And help the others. This is what happens also when a normal human being also sheds the body-mind life, okay, you go into the subtle world, and there you feel yourself to be free. Now, I'll just mention, I think I mentioned once, but in this context it becomes very clear. Okay, sometimes in the physical world, when we lose somebody, we don't want to lose them, so we want to establish a contact, and you come to know somehow that their soul is there in the subtle world, and you want to contact them. So you go to somebody who is capable of making this contact. Okay, I'll tell you a very interesting story about a person who told us the story herself. She was, we used to call her Didi. I've forgotten the exact name. She was a Bengali lady from Lucknow. She speaks excellent Hindi, but she was Bengali. And her daughter had died, and she wanted to contact her daughter. And she did contact her daughter through a medium. Okay, but that daughter told her, Ma, amake dekho na. Don't call me, because my soul now wants to go out of this body mind, doesn't want to remain in the physical. So when you call me back, okay, you are actually hindering my progress, and it's painful for me to come back into have contact with the physical world where suffering, falsehood and all this is there. So please don't call me. Okay. So although it hurt her, okay, they used to call her Didi. She stopped calling her daughter. And what happened? Very interesting. She came to Pondicherry and she became the guardian of 10, 12 children. And she says, look at mother's grace. I lost one daughter, but now I have 10, 12 children, all such loving, beautiful children. So she used to be in the...
Rangada?
Yes, tell me.
That may be her soul or her vital being. She was calling the vital being or the soul. How do you distinguish?
Yes. It's very difficult for me to say what it was. It could also be the mental being, but you are right. Okay, you are quite right. Okay, it is because the shedding is gradual. Na? First you shed the physical being, but you have not yet shed your vital being and your mental being, and the soul is there inside. So the covering of the is like your clothes. Huh? The outer clothes you shed, then there is a banyan, then there is something even more, an outer coat, and then a shirt, and then a banyan. So these are the things. The vital and the mental are still there. Okay, it could be. Okay, Okay, so it depends on when she called and how she called. So all these things, all the cases are possible. Your question is a very valid one. Okay. So this is what happened, and she told us this herself. Okay, so this can happen. So all three possibilities. Either the soul can disappear into the infinite from where it came, just like the wave that disappears when it comes to the shore and breaks and dissolves. It goes back into the ocean. That's one. Or the other is you continue to remain in the subtle world and have interaction with the physical world. Or third possibility that Mother and Shiva are suggesting, take birth again in a body, new body. But this time, don't be a slave to your body, mind, life. Come back with the divine consciousness, and when you are there, you will become a instrument of the divine and do his work in the physical world. What is the divine work in the physical world? Evolution. Going from one level to another level, another level. That's what he's suggesting. Okay? So, so these are the, so we stopped in the middle of something, so I'm just, so Seven is saying, but this is not the only line of issue. It is possible, on the contrary, for me to wait till the silence of this timeless, unfilled liberation, I begin to enter into relations with that yet ungrasped source of myself and my actions. The ungrasped source is the transcendent, but you are not fully aware and you are not knowing the source. But you feel that it is something is there. Then the void begins to fill, there emerges out of it, or there rushes into it, all the manifold truth of the divine. And what is the manifold truth of the divine? Sat, substance, Sat, Chit, consciousness, Shakti, power, and Ananda. All these are the manifold truth of the divine. The divine truth can be reduced to Satchidananda. But mind you, the Ananda can be 100,000 million times different Anandas. Then consciousness also can be different consciousnesses. And the power also can be of so many different types of. So you mustn't think that all this is only one. Even substance. In the physical world, it becomes 120 elements. Now 190 elements. So all these things, the one becoming the many, this is what happens. Okay, so the manifold truth of the divine and all aspects and manifestations and many levels of the dynamic infinite. The many levels are the 7 planes of consciousness. Matter, life, mind, okay, supermind, Sat, Chit, Ananda. At first, this experience imposes on the mind and then on all our being an absolute, fathomless, infinite, almost an abysmal peace and silence. In the beginning, the nirvana experience is abysmal peace and silence. Note, silence, no action, and peace, liberation. And it has no end, abysmal. Okay? So, overpowered and subjugated, stilled, okay? No action, absolutely static condition. Liberated from itself, the mind accepts the silence itself as the supreme. It is so convincing that you feel that this is the ultimate truth. But afterwards, the seeker discovers that all is there for him, contained or new made in that silence, and through it descends upon him from a greater concealed transcendent existence. So this is like, we can explain this. First of all, you are emptied of all your wrong notions. You feel the physical world is real, you feel your ego is real, all these things are all emptied out. It's like you have a dirty cup of water. So you have to, first of all, if you want to fill it with pure water, you have to throw out all these things. So all your wrong notions, wrong emotions are all emptied out. And you have the experience of the silent, static, empty nirvana or self. Then if you wait long enough and you're not impatient, if you're impatient, you will disappear into the infinite. But if you're not impatient and you wait, Similarly use the word wait. In Laptevan also he says, if you wait, okay, then all these things come in. Knowledge, power, all these things come into that emptiness. So that's what he's saying. For it descends upon him from a greater concealed transcendent existence. For this transcendent, this absolute is not a mere piece of signless emptiness. So, signless emptiness, there can be a signless emptiness and there can be a full emptiness. The full emptiness is the seed. Okay? The silent emptiness, nothing will come out of it. It has its own infinite contents and riches, of which ours are debased and diminished values. So, whatever values we have here are all debased and diminished values. Okay. Sat is pure substance. Here it becomes all the elements in the physical world. Chit is consciousness, and here we have physical consciousness, vital consciousness, and mental consciousness, all limited. It is consciousness, but it is limited. Your vital power also, pure energy, becomes desire and attachment and all these things. So these are the diminished values, said they say. If there were not that source of all things, that means if the transcendent is not there, there could be no universe. All powers, all works and activities would be an illusion. All creation and manifestation would be impossible. So he's saying very clearly that the water behind the dam, which is absolutely static, because it exists, there are rivers. The rivers are the motion, and the physical world is the motions. Okay? So the physical world exists only because there is a static source of all these things. Like the, if you want another image, glacier and the rivers. And when the snow melts, the glacier produces the rivers. The glacier itself is absolutely silent. Okay, no movement at all. There is a movement in glaciers. That's why it's not a perfect example, but a good enough example for us to understand. Okay. The transcendent is the glacier, and it produces all the movement in the physical world, which is the movement in the physical world. Okay. So that Ramakrishna says it in one sentence: when the water is static, it is spirit, it is God, and when the water is moving, it creates waves, it is the physical world. Okay. This is what Shendra is saying in the para. And the time is now 8:20. We have still got 23 minutes. So shall we read the next one?
Rangada, can I ask
Yes,
a
yes.
question?
Yeah, tell me.
In the beginning of the paragraph, you said that our soul can be in any part of the our entities like a mind, vital, and body.
Okay.
So can you say that are they like a Kshara Purusha has any relation there? Akshara Purusha and Kshara Purusha in the Gita, and the soul can inhabit in any part of our being.
Suki, you know, I am 83. Okay.
Okay,
I'm a bit deaf. So why don't you do one thing? As usual, send me the on email, okay, your question. I'll answer.
so also my mic is not that good, so the
I'm
sound
very
might
sorry,
not be
really,
clear.
because
No, no.
I can hear sound, but I can't hear words. Okay, so
Okay, okay.
please do that. Okay, don't
Yes,
mind.
yes,
Huh?
yes, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so I can hear sound, but I can't hear very often. I can't hear words. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
that's a problem with my limitations. So what to do? Everybody has got limitations in the physical world. So, in fact, when you go to the self, the limitations vanish, and you are in the infinite. But now it is static. That also is a sort of limitation. Okay. So shall we read the next one? These are the three fundamental realizations. Suki, why don't you
Shall I
only?
read?
Yeah,
Sure.
read.
Yeah, I will read.
These are the three
There are.
fundamental realizations.
Mhm. These are the three fundamental realizations. So fundamental that to the yogin of the way of knowledge, they seem ultimate, sufficient in themselves, destined to overtop and replace all others. And yet, for the integral seeker, whether accorded to him at any early stage, suddenly and easily by a miraculous grace, or achieved with difficulty after a long progress and endeavor, they are neither the sole truth nor the full and only clues to the integral truth of the eternal, but rather the unfilled beginning, the best foundation of a greater divine knowledge. Other realizations there are, there are that are imperatively needed and must be explored to the full limit of their possibilities. And if some of them appear to a first sight to cover only divine aspects that are instrumental to the activity of existence, but not inherent in its essence, yet, when followed to their end, through that activity to its everlasting source, it is found that they lead to a disclosure of the divine, without which our knowledge of the truth behind things would be left bare and incomplete. These seeming instrumentals are the key to the secret, without which the fundamentals themselves would not unveil all the mystery. All the revelatory aspects of the divine must be caught in the wide net of the integral yoga.
Okay, they're very interesting, and he's using two words, instrumentals and fundamentals. Okay, but he is using these words because they convey something when we'll see what he's saying. So quickly we'll go through, we can finish this para today. These are the three fundamental realizations. What are these fundamental realizations? The transcendent, the cosmic, and the individual. So, when you enter into the transcendent, the physical world disappears, your ego disappears, okay, and you are in the beginning, you are in an absolutely empty condition. Okay? There is no movement, and there is absolutely a sort of uh, zero. You are in a consciousness which is real, but it is absolutely void of any contents. There is nothing, no form, no shape, no color, nothing at all. It's absolutely featureless. That's the thing. So that's a transcendent. Then the cosmic. The cosmic is what is the uh, seeing the divine in the or in the divine presence. You can see. You feel that the divine is there everywhere. A form, the divine presence in the physical world. That's a cosmic. And in the individual, you see the divine within yourself. He has told you that first you see the cosmic, you see the divine outside yourself, but you can also see the divine within yourself. And when you see the divine within yourself, you feel that you also can contain the whole world in your own consciousness. So these are the three fundamental realizations: transcendental, cosmic, and individual. Usually they are experienced exclusive of each other, either this or that or that. But Shremda in the previous para has told you that two of them can exist at the same time, and at the highest level of spiritual experience, all will be experienced at the same time, which is very unusual. Okay? So these are the three fundamental realizations, so fundamental, so basic, that to the yogin of the way of knowledge, the Jnana Yogi, they seem ultimate. Why is he saying knowledge? Because when you are experiencing the Bhakti Yoga, you see the divine within yourself. It's a different type of thing. So here he is concentrating on the Jnana Yoga. You make your mind silent and you go above the mind. They seem ultimate, sufficient in themselves, destined to overtop and replace all others. You feel that this is the last truth of existence. That's what he's saying. Okay? So fundamental and so ultimate, and they are sufficient in themselves. You don't need anything else to explain to you what the divine is, because it is infinite, all containing, and absolutely devoid of any limitations, destined to overtop and replace all others. Any other experience that you have is only subordinate to it. And yet, if you are an integral seeker, if you are a follower of Sri Aurobindo, there is something more. And yet, for the integral seeker, whether accorded to him at an early stage, subtly and easily by miraculous grace, or achieved with difficulty after a long progress and endeavor, they are neither the sole truth nor the full and only clues to the integral truth of the eternal, but rather the unfilled beginning, the vast foundation of a greater divine knowledge. Okay? So, this is what he's saying. So, it's a huge sentence. We'll see what he's saying. So, when you enter into this, you can very easily be convinced that this is the last experience. And that is why most of these Indian sages, they say that the Brahman consciousness is the ultimate truth. But then they're saying, you don't need to take it that way. You can also go even beyond that. And look at Srindo's modesty. He's saying, accorded to him at an early stage, suddenly and easily by a miraculous grace. He is referring to his own case, where in one day he achieved the silent mind, which others take a whole lifetime to realize, okay, and many, many years. Okay? So, with difficulty, easily by miraculous grace. He says that in a letter also. He says it was given to me by grace, miracle. In one day, my mind became silent, okay, or achieved with difficulty after a long progress. This is what normally happens in ordinary human beings who are trying to make their mind silent. And endeavor. Long progress and endeavor. They are neither the sole truth nor the full and only clues to the integral truth of the divine. The static condition, the transcendental, is not the only truth. There is also a dynamic truth of the divine. Okay? That's what he's saying. But rather the unfilled beginning. In the previous paragraph, he has also used a very similar but different words. Unfilled beginning. Okay? In the beginning, you are in a sort of emptiness and it is unfilled. Okay? That emptiness starts filling up afterwards. The vast foundation of a greater divine knowledge. The greater divine knowledge is the transcendent consciousness starts filling up. And the greater divine knowledge, Chit Shakti, Sat Chit Ananda, all these things come into being. Other realizations there are that are imperatively needed and must be explored to the full extent of to the full limit of their possibility. So when they're saying that don't think that the Brahman consciousness is the only consciousness. Even the Gita refers to it. The Gita speaks of the third level of the Purushottama. So in the first level, we are the Kshara Purusha. We are the mutable Purusha. The psychic being is the mutable Purusha. It is growing, so it's mutable. When you go to the second level, the spiritual planes of consciousness, it is immutable Akshara Purusha, which is the Brahman consciousness. The third one is the Uttama Purusha, the ultimate Purusha, the ultimate experience, which is both personal as well as impersonal. You see the divine as a person ruling, like a king ruling his own kingdom, but you also see him as impersonal. Okay? So now Srindra is saying the other experiences are instrumental. What he means by this is that your body, mind, life, however undivine it may seem to be, they are instruments of the divine. They are degraded and diminished conditions of Satchit Ananda. This is something that he is saying very clearly because he is interested in establishing the contact between spirit and matter. If he can't do that, a divine life on earth is not possible. And constantly he is telling you right from the beginning in the integral yoga that a divine life on earth is possible. We don't need to disappear. We don't need to think that the physical world is permanently imperfect. There is an evolution. Where is the permanent? There is a clear progress from matter to life and from life to mind. Okay? And from mind, already so many have gone above the mind, the yogic consciousness. So now there can be something even beyond the yogic consciousness, it can be the supramental. And that is possible because there is a gradation and a chain, a connectedness. That's what is saying. Okay? So must be explored to the full limit of the possibility. So he's saying that the instrumentals are the connection between body-mind. Your body, mind, life are instruments. And they are connected to the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda. And your body, mind, life are fallen conditions of Sat, Chit, Ananda. Okay? That's what he's saying. There's a connection between the two. However much they seem to be opposites. And if some of them appear at first sight to cover only divine aspects that are instrumental, your body, matter, life and mind, to the activity of existence, but not inherent in its essence. Essentially, you don't see the divine consciousness in matter, life and mind. Yet, when followed to their end through their activity to its everlasting source in the transcendental, it is found that they lead to a disclosure of the divine, without which our knowledge of the truth behind things would be left bare and incomplete. This sentence is, he is repeating the Isha Upanishad. The Isha Upanishad says very clearly that when you are identified with your body, mind, life, you are in ignorance. But when your consciousness rises to the spiritual planes of consciousness and you enter the Brahman consciousness, the physical world disappears and you see the Brahman as the only truth. That is, in a sense, even more of an ignorance, because you are not seeing the divine in all his aspects. You have to see the divine even in the physical world. So that's what he's saying here. Okay? So he's saying you must have the knowledge of God's light, but you must also have the knowledge of God's darkness. And even in the darkness, he is there. That's what he's saying. These seeming instrumentals are the key to a secret without which the fundamentals themselves would not unveil all their mystery. So, when the Mayavadin, when this ascetic goes to the higher level of consciousness and rejects the physical world, he is not seeing the reality of the physical world and he is not understanding God's purpose in having created this so-called illusion. Why should God create an illusion? The Shrevda is not satisfied and he wants an answer to that, and he waits patiently until he sees that there is a connection between the two and there is a slow revelation of the divine in the physical world. That's the evolution. So now you understand the purpose of having the divine having created the physical world. You understand the purpose. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, what's the time? 8:32. So we can stop here today, but we have got 3 minutes. So I'll read out to you the summary of what he's saying here. Okay? Sometimes the summary helps. Right? So the 3 fundamental realizations of the divine have been dealt with in the 3 previous paragraphs. The individual, which is described on page 116, the cosmic, which is described on pages 116 and 117, and the transcendent, which is described on page 117, 118. So fundamental and so convincing are these experiences that the sadhaka of the Jnana Yoga considers them as final, ultimate, self-sufficient, needing no other. It's the ultimate knowledge. But to the seeker of the integral yoga, these experiences may come, number 1, suddenly, even at an early stage. Number 2, by miraculous grace. Number 3, achieved with difficulty after a long struggle. You may be a follower of Sri Aurobindo, but you'll have to struggle a long time because you are beginning with an imperfect body-mind life. But they are not the final nor the only truths of existence. Rather, they are the beginning of a much vaster and more powerful yoga which include bliss and power. There are other aspects of the divinity that have to be explored, discovered and realized. The fundamental experiences are the individual, the cosmic and the transcendental. And the instrumental experiences are connected to the body, Sat, subtle substance. Body is connected to Sat, subtle substance. Life is connected to Chit Shakti. Mind is connected to the supermind. And he has not mentioned the other one, but Ananda is connected to the psychic being. Their interaction and their rather distant relations are of primary importance in the integral yoga. If you are a follower of Sri Aurobindo, you have to take them that even your body, mind, life, which seems so undivine, they are actually connected with the divine. The essential identity of Satchidananda and cosmos, or spirit and matter, is the key to the next step of evolution in Sri Aurobindo's philosophy and yoga. This is what he's saying in the paragraph. So we stop here today. Okay. The Sri Aurobindo is actually taking you to the next level of the evolution. And not only he is telling you this in writing and in theory, but they actually did it. Mother and Sri Aurobindo in tandem. Sri Aurobindo left his body to work in the subtle, and Mother continued his work for 23 years. After 1950, for 23 years, she was trying to transform her body, and although she may not have succeeded, as Sri Aurobindo says, success is not important, but the effort is important, because that effort leaves a trace of itself in the physical world, and the next person who comes can use the experience of this, what mother has undergone, it is available to others. So that is what we say. Okay? We stop here today.
Okay.
Yes,
Au revoir,
Rangada.
Rangada.
Okay.
Bonjour, Rangada. Merci.
Thank you, Rangada.